This really happened to me, and telling it still makes my palms sweat. I'm not dressing it up. What you're about to hear is how my own brother tried to erase me with a pen stroke, and how I learned to fight back with paper cuts. The signature on the stock transfer was mine, but I had never signed it. It sat under glass on my father's old oak desk, the one with the brass keyhole and water ring from his coffee, right in the middle of our conference room at Alvarez Heating and Supply on South Peoria Street in Pilsen. We were gathered around that scarred table, our plant manager Luis, our bookkeeper Alicia, 2 outside investors, and my brother Ethan, when he slid the frame toward me like a dealer pushing a losing hand. The room smelled like metal dust and lemon cleaner. The fluorescent hum above us sounded like static in my ears. "Elena," he said, voice so soft it cut, "you transferred your shares to me last October. You don't remember? If you genuinely enjoy our stories, please subscribe to the channel, tell us where you're from, and what time it is right now. It's always fascinating to know how far our story flows." I stared at the swooping E that wasn't mine, at least not like that. My E curls left in tightens. On the page, it ballooned rightward like a sail. Someone had learned my rhythm and gotten cocky. The notary seal in the lower corner was crisp, blue-inked, bearing the name Sharon K. Moses, State of Illinois. The date beneath it read October 17th. I ran my thumb along the frame and felt the glass, cool and slick, like holding a lie that's been refrigerated. "Where did you get this?" I asked. "From the file cabinet," he said, smiling without his eyes. "Dad kept good records. He wanted the company streamlined, one decision maker." My throat tightened. Our father, Javier, had run Alvarez Heating and Supply for 37 years. He built it out of a rented garage in Brighton Park, fixing furnaces in winter and swamp coolers in summer until his knuckles went raw. When he got sick, esophageal cancer that stole his voice first and his appetite second, he'd begged us to stop bickering. "Keep the trucks running," he rasped to us in a Northwestern Memorial Hospital room with a window facing Lake Michigan. "Customers don't care who owns what. They care if their heat works." He died in late September. October had been a fog. But I didn't sign anything. I remember that as clearly as I remember the click of my dad's black thermos lid, the radio he left tuned to WGN, the way he'd rub the back of my neck when I worked late. I lifted the frame. The paper inside was thick, expensive, the color of old bones. In neat type were the words, "Stock Transfer Agreement." My printed name appeared above a signature line. The pen strokes forming Elena Alvarez wavered to match my natural pressure changes, the tiny drag where I typically pause before the Z. Whoever did, this had practiced. Whoever did this thought they were untouchable. "Why would I sign my inheritance away?" I said. I kept my voice low because anger on me tends to sound like shrillness in other people's ears, especially men who call themselves practical. Ethan leaned back, one arm draped over the chair like a cape. He wore the Navy suit he saved for bank meetings and funerals. "Because you were overwhelmed," he said. "You said you wanted to focus on operations, that the legal stuff was too much with Dad gone. I told you I'd take the burden. You looked me in the eye and thanked me." Alicia, who'd been with us since we had only one delivery van, shifted in her chair. The 2 outside investors, a couple from Naperville who'd put in $100,000 when we expanded to commercial rooftop units, looked at me as if meeting me for the first time. "You can't be serious," I said, throat burning. "I'm afraid it's serious." Ethan tapped the frame. "And binding. I have updated the bank. Effective today, I'm the sole owner. We'll talk about titles later. For now, I need your laptop and keys before lunch." I felt that last sentence more than the rest. It was naked and practical, like telling someone to take their shoes off before stepping onto the rug where you keep your dead. The fluorescent hum swelled until it felt like an alarm. I looked at Luis. He stared at the table. I looked at Alicia. Her eyes shone. "I didn't sign this?" I whispered. Ethan's smile flattened into patience. That special male patience that's one step away from a threat. Elena, don't make this harder. I put the frame down. For a wild second, I considered smashing it against the floor, grinding the glass into the concrete until the paper shredded under my heel. But I didn't. Dad would have rolled his eyes. Paper fights paper, he used to say when vendors got cute. There's a receipt for every lie. I looked at the notary seal again. Blue ink. Sharon K. Moses. October 17th. There's a peculiar calm that descends in a good betrayal. It's the kind of calm that makes your attention sharp enough to slice. I took my phone and typed Sharon K. Moses, Illinois Notary into Google under the table. The first hit was a public database at the Illinois Secretary of State. Commission, Char 1117, active. The second hit was a Yelp listing for a UPS store on North Clark Street that offered notary services. The third was a LinkedIn page with a gray silhouette and no posts. May I take this? I asked, fingers still on the frame. To scan? Of course, Ethan said smoothly. Use the brother in the copy room, and... He held out his hand, palm up, like a cop at a traffic stop. Keys, laptop. I smiled back at him the way you smile at a dentist who says, "You'll feel a little pressure." I pulled my keyring free and set it on the table. The red tag that said Shopgate clinked against the brass. I closed my laptop and slid it over, keeping the frame. "I'll be 15 minutes, I said. I walked to the copy room like my body had remembered how to move before my brain got permission. The brother printer beeped awake. I scanned the document at 600 DPI and sent the file to my personal email, then to a brand new Gmail I created on the spot for one reason only: to exist outside any system my brother could touch. I took photos of the page under the fluorescent light, then under the window where sunlight hit, then with the overhead off, letting the screen glow from my phone. I zoomed into the signature until pixels looked like mountains. I could see the blunt start of the lowercase L, a microscopic dot where the pen lifted too early, a hesitation in the V. It felt like looking at footprints in snow. When I came back, Ethan had my office door open and was going through my drawers. He didn't even look embarrassed. Luis looked away. The investors whispered. "You're out," Ethan said softly, as if breaking bad news about a flight delay. "We'll talk severance after the dust settles." "Of course," I said. "One last thing." He cocked his head. I held the frame up, tilted it like a waitress showing off a dessert tray. "What did Dad say when I signed this?" Ethan's jaw twitched. "He said he was relieved you were being an adult." "You know what Dad said to me in September?" I asked. "He told me if you tried to pull anything cute, to remember the clerk's office was on the first floor of the Daily Center, not the 12th. I let that hang. The Daily Center, the Richard J. Daly Center downtown, with the Picasso sculpture in the plaza that every tourist photographs, was where our father had fought a contractor once over a lien and won. He believed in courts the way some people believe in saints. I took the frame with me when I left. Outside, the March wind off the river sliced me open. I walked 3 blocks because I couldn't feel my mouth, and then decided to keep walking because feeling caught up. At a bus stop on Halsted, I sat and stared at the frame in my lap, at the way the blue notary ink bled slightly where the rubber stamp had been pressed too hard. The blue was wrong. Every notary I'd ever used stamped black. I Googled again. Notaries could use blue or black. Damn. Then I looked up UPS Store Notary Journal, Illinois. Every notary in Illinois must keep a journal. They must record signers, IDs, dates, and the document type. They must be able to produce it when asked by the Secretary of State or a court. A woman in a pink coat sat beside me and started a loud phone call about a cousin borrowing her car. Her words blurred as I called the number for the UPS store linked to Sharon's name. A man answered. "This is 1830 N. Clark. How can I help?" "Do you have a notary named Sharon Moses?" I asked. "We do. She's in from noon to 4. Does she have her journal for October 17th available? Pause. Yeah, she keeps her journal. Great. I'll be there in 20 minutes, I said. Please tell her Elena from Alvarez Heating and Supply is coming with cookies. I hung up, then ducked into a cafe and bought 2 boxes of dark chocolate sea salt cookies because sugar makes people forget protocol. On the Brown Line North, I texted Alicia, "If he asks where I went, tell him I went to the bank. Don't give him my scans." She replied with a single word, "Run." The UPS store was the color of masking tape and fat with boxes. Sharon was mid-50s, neat bun, bad reading glasses. She eyed the cookies like a cat stares at a sunny patch on a rug. I set the frame on the counter and pushed it toward her. "Did you notarize this?" Sharon leaned down. "That's my name," she said, tapping the embossment. Then she frowned. "But that's not my stamp." "What do you mean?" "My stamp circle has a tiny nick at the top from when I dropped it, like a bite out of a cookie." She glanced at the cookies. "I see everything I stamp, and I feel it too. The handle is loose. This circle is perfect." "Could someone else have used your name?" I asked, trying to keep adrenaline from blotting out my hearing. "My commission number looks right, but if it's from October 17th, I can check my journal." She reached under the counter and pulled out a bound book that smelled faintly of ink and cardboard, pages and pages of tidy entries. She flipped to October. Her fingertip ran down a column. October 15th, 16, 17. She tapped 3 names, a car title, a power of attorney, a school record, no stock transfer, no Alvarez, no Elena. "May I take a photo?" I asked. She hesitated. I pushed a cookie box sideways. "I didn't show you anything," she said, turning the book slightly so the light chewed on the ink. I took 2 quick photos. "If someone used my stamp, that's a big problem," she added. "But that's not my stamp. I'll swear to it." I left feeling the wind had changed direction. A document is a story that pretends it isn't. My brother's story had a loose thread. I could already feel the end of it between my fingers. I took the red line back downtown and cut across the Picasso's steel shadows to the Daly Center. The revolving doors dumped me into marble and echoes. The clerk's office smelled like old paper, cool and faintly sweet. I asked for a civil intake clerk and spoke to a woman named Anna with braids like a crown. I told her I needed to file for a temporary restraining order in Chancery to preserve the status quo in a shareholder dispute. Her eyebrows lifted halfway up her forehead and then settled into a look I recognized, women helping women in places where men assume you're lost. "Judge Hastings has emergency motions at 3:30, she said, sliding me forms. "Do you have exhibits?" "I do," I said, touching the frame under my arm like it had a pulse. "And I have an appointment with a forensic document examiner at 5. "Smart," she said. "You a lawyer?" "No," I said. "Just stubborn." She smiled. "Sometimes that wins." I filled out the forms with hands that shook in little aftershocks, like my body was catching up with what my brain had decided. I texted a friend from grad school who'd become a lawyer, and she texted back with a name. "Try Tara Nguyen at Levin and Parker. She knows Chancery, and she doesn't mansplain." I called Tara from the hallway, where the vending machine hummed like a refrigerator. She answered on the second ring. I gave her a sentence that sounded insane. "My brother says I transferred him my shares, and I think he forged me." "Where are you?" she asked. "The Daly Center?" "I'm upstairs," she said. "I'll meet you by the Picasso in 5. 5 minutes later, a woman in a gray blazer that looked like it could slice bread shook my hand and said, "Let's go ruin somebody's afternoon." We filed the emergency motion. Tara asked for a TRO preventing any changes to bank signatories or corporate structure until we could have a preliminary injunction hearing. She attached my scans as Exhibit A and a declaration of my own as Exhibit B, where I swore under penalty of perjury that I had not signed the document. She asked for leave to issue subpoenas duces tecum, document subpoenas for the notary's journal, my father's file cabinets, and our company's security logs. Ethan showed up. He had a lawyer with him, the kind of man whose tie not announces he keeps his teeth in a glass case at night. They smirked while we waited. He caught my eye and mouthed, "Too late." Judge Hastings took the bench at 3:35. She looked like every grade school principal who ever kept order with a glance. Tara argued. The other lawyer argued. I watched the judge like sailors watch the horizon. She denied the TRO, but granted an expedited schedule for a preliminary injunction in 7 days. She told both sides to preserve all documents. Then she looked over her reading glasses at Ethan. "And that includes the original notarization," she said, "if one exists." We left in a storm of paper. Outside on the plaza, the wind whipped my hair into my mouth, and it tasted like metal. Tara stood beside me and stared at the trampled remnants of a hot dog wrapper tumbling along the concrete like a tumbleweed that got lost. "You said you had a document examiner at 5?" she asked. "Yes," I said. "Her name is Dr. Lila Chen, board certified. She teaches at UIC. I'd called her from the UPS store, breathless, and she'd agreed to see me. "Good," Tara said. "Bring her whatever you've got. Ask her to look at pressure patterns, line quality, pen lifts, retouching, and any indications of tracing. Also ask about ink dating. It's more art than science, but sometimes you get lucky." "Can we subpoena my dad's house security logs?" I asked. Dad had a Nest cam pointed at the basement staircase because he'd fallen once and never forgiven gravity. "Absolutely," Tara said. "And email me those journal photos. If we can show the notary didn't record your signature that day, we've got a thread to pull." By the time I rode the Blue Line out to UIC's west side, the sky had gone the color of pennies. Dr. Chen's office inside the Applied Health Sciences building smelled like paper and citrus wipes. She wore a black cardigan and magnifying glasses that made her eyes look like murals. On her desk, she had a stereo microscope, a digital microscope, a light box, and a stack of gel pens that looked like a flower bed. She asked no small talk. "Hand it over," she said, and when I did, she handled the frame like a delicate truth. She slid the paper out and laid it naked on the light box, then lowered the microscope's head until it kissed the fibers. "This was signed with a gel ink pen," she murmured. "Medium tip. The line has intermittent skipping. Do you normally sign with gel ink or ballpoint?" "Ballpoint," I said. "Blue." She nodded. Gel ink tends to sit on the paper surface more. The drying time can be measured within a limited window. It's not perfect, because humidity and paper quality play roles, but you can sometimes tell if the ink is older than a certain number of months. She tilted the paper, watching the way the strokes reflected the light. "There's retouching here," she added, tracing a line in the air above the Z. "And here, at the cross of the T, the pressure is inconsistent with a natural signature. The way you press hard then lighten suggests hesitation and training. Whoever did this practiced, but not enough." "How can you tell?" "The tremor," she said. "A natural signature is more fluid even when you're emotional or hurried. A forged one wobbles microscopically. Also, scanning can give us pixel data on edge roughness and quantify the wobble. You'll need high-resolution scans, which you said you have?" "I have them." She turned the paper. "Who notarized this?" "Sharon K. Moses, but her journal shows no entry for me that day." Dr. Chen peered again. "Do you see this faint stippling at the edges of the printed text? This looks like it was printed on a color laser printer that uses yellow microdots for forensic tracking." "Yellow what?" "Most color laser printers place an almost invisible array of yellow dot patterns on each printed page. They can sometimes be decoded to determine the date, time, and printer serial number. It's controversial, but it exists." I felt something in my chest click into place. If we can decode it, we can trace the printer. "Possibly," Dr. Chen said. "If it's one of the models in the known sets, I'll need to take high-resolution photos under blue light." "May I?" "Yes," I said, my throat suddenly tight. If this piece of bone-colored paper held its own GPS, then maybe the lie had left tracks. She took her photos. She showed me the gel ink under oblique light, where the strokes sat like a shallow river that hadn't soaked all the way into the banks. She showed me how the first stroke of the E had a blunt, flat start, instead of the tapered line you get when someone signs in one go. She talked about pen lifts and retouching the way a composer talks about a missing note. "I'll have a preliminary report by morning," she said finally. "And Elena, don't be surprised if the person who forged this didn't understand how many footprints a printer leaves." When I stepped back into the night, Chicago smelled like someone had scraped a match across the sky. I walked past the Francescas on Taylor Street, where our father used to take us after report cards, past a lawyer's office with blinds like closed eyelids, past a man selling Cubs beanies from a plastic bin. My phone buzzed. It was an email from Tara. "I sent subpoenas to the UPS store, the notary, your brother, your dad's house, and your office's keycard system. Also, do you have the alarm company's logs?" A second email appeared a moment later from our alarm company. "We received a data preservation request." I breathed. I took the 157 bus to Mom's place in Bridgeport because she still cooked in grief, like it could tether her to the living. She was at the stove stirring arroz con pollo. The house smelled like saffron and home and ghosts. She looked at me and knew. "¿Qué pasó?" she asked. "Ethan thinks I gave him everything," I said. "I think he forged me." She closed her eyes. Her free hand went to the crucifix at her throat, as if it were a volume knob for the chaos. "Tu papá nunca—" She cut herself off, then said in English, the way she did when she needed me to hear her as both mother and witness. "Your father told me you were the fighter. He said Ethan could charm, but you could endure." I nodded because I couldn't trust my voice. "Did anyone come to the house in October?" "People came and went," she said. "Everyone brought food. Cousins slept on couches. The priest." She frowned. "Ethan had a man here late one night. They went into your papa's office downstairs. I woke up to pee and saw the light." "What night?" I asked. She thought. "It was cold. Your father's friend Arturo brought pozole that day. The White Sox had a game on TV. I remember the sound." She shook her head. "My memories are soup." I kissed her forehead and went downstairs to the basement office. Dad's desk was tidy, the way he liked it. The Nest camera blinked like a patient animal. I opened the app on my phone and scrolled back, thumb dragging time like a bead on an abacus. October, I tapped the date, the 17th, the motion. Log showed 3 pings between 11:12 p.m. and 12:06 a.m. I tapped the first and watched the grainy clip, the staircase, the squeak of a shoe, a shoulder passing the lens. Not enough face. I tapped the second, and chills spidered my arms. There, halfway down the stairs, was Ethan. He was carrying a leather portfolio and a small bag with a logo I recognized from a shop on Wells that sells personalized office supplies. Behind him, a woman I didn't know followed, holding her phone flashlight, the beam jittery. They went into Dad's office. The camera caught the door crack, lightening and darkening like a heartbeat. I pressed play on the third clip. It showed the same sliver of light. Then the light grew, the door opened, and the woman walked out carrying a little black rectangle. I zoomed in until pixels broke into squares that looked like a quilt. A notary stamp? She tucked it into her purse. Ethan followed, leather portfolio under his arm, face tilted away from the lens like a criminal who knows where the cameras are. I stared at the timestamp at the top of the screen. OCT 17, 12:02 a.m. My brother hadn't borrowed my signature. He'd broken into our father's office in the middle of the night to steal it, and the camera had been watching the entire time. I replayed the basement clips until my eyes stung, pausing on the moment the woman's hand slid that black rectangle into her purse. The square edges, the quick practiced motion, it was as clear as a confession to anybody who's ever stood in a bank lobby watching a notary stamp a loan packet. She'd brought the seal. She'd come to our father's house after midnight with my brother, and she'd brought the seal. I airdropped the clips to my laptop, and then, out of an old instinct drilled into me by a man who loved receipts, I exported them twice. Once to a USB drive I'd kept in a coffee can of washers, and once to a private cloud folder Tara had provided through her firm. Before I closed the app, I turned off the Nest camera's little status light. Paranoia isn't paranoia when the predator is someone who knows where the camera lives. Upstairs, Mom touched my elbow while the arroz con pollo simmered and said, "You found something." "I found them," I said. The pot lid rattled. Mom turned the flame to low, as if you can simmer grief into something you can swallow. "What will you do?" she asked. "Turn it into paper," I said, and she smiled, a small, tired thing that said she could hear my father in my mouth. By morning, Dr. Chin had emailed her preliminary report. Tara was CC'd. It read like a quiet storm. "Significant indications consistent with simulation are forgery," she wrote, and then listed them: tremor, pen lifts, blunt begins, patching on downstrokes, ink characteristics consistent with gel ink, unlikely to match declarant's typical instrument, pressure patterns inconsistent with declarant's known exemplars. There were photos, cropped images of my forged E blown wide like a canyon, with red arrows pointing to tiny staggers my naked eye had missed. At the end, a paragraph. Under blue light, detectable microdot pattern, likely from a color laser printer. I have taken high-resolution images to attempt EFF decoding. If successful, we may identify date, time, and device code. My stomach did a little seismic roll. Tara's reply arrived 5 minutes later. "This is excellent. I'm filing a supplemental affidavit today with Dr. Chen's report and moving for leave to inspect the original ink with IR oblique lighting. Also, our subpoena to the UPS store came back. Sharon will swear the journal shows no entry for you 1017 and the stamp is not hers. We'll take her deposition Friday." The notary who wasn't a notary, the journal with no line for me, the ink that didn't behave like mine. The thread wasn't just loose, it was unraveling. I drove to the office early and parked across South Peoria Street in a spot that would have made my dad laugh. He believed double parking was an art form. Alvarez trucks were already idling, white boxes exhaling in the cold. Luis was on the loading dock, hands shoved deep into his jacket pockets. When he saw me, he looked around like a kid caught picking a lock. "He changed the locks," he said. "Yesterday, I used my own key. The alarm still recognizes us, but he said he's going to reconfigure permissions before the end of the week." "Did he say anything about me, Shisa?" I asked. Luis's eyes flicked toward the office windows. "He told the crews you stepped back for health reasons. He told Alicia to route invoices to him only. He told the investors we missed payroll because of your overspending on safety equipment." Luis's jaw tightened. Half the guys believe him. The other half are waiting to see who signs checks on Friday. Smear me as hysterical and reckless, isolate the money, change the locks. None of it was creative, but it worked because it's always worked. The only defense against a narrative like that is evidence so heavy it dents the table when you set it down. "Where is he?" I asked. "In Dad's office," Luis said. "He moved in. Says he deserves the window." I nodded once, thankful my father wasn't alive to hear that. I crossed the street and went in through the dock door. Inside, the scent of copper pipe and cardboard hit me the way the smell of a church might hit somebody who still believes. I kept my head down past the lockers, past the break room with the battered microwave that required a hip to close, past the bulletin board where OSHA posters curled at the corners. At Alicia's desk, she slipped me a thumb drive so smoothly it felt rehearsed. "Keycard logs and copier scans," she whispered. "From October. He doesn't know I saved them." "I owe you empanadas," I murmured, and she smiled without showing teeth. "Any idea who the woman is?" I asked. Alicia hesitated. "He hired a temp in October, blonde, tall, nails like knives. Said she'd come in after hours to help him catch up on admin. I only saw her once, leaving by the side door after 9. He called her Ray or Rena, something like that. Rena, I repeated, pocketing the name like a blade. I didn't try the office door. I didn't want a scene that morning. Instead, I ducked into the copy room and, with the door click shut, pulled the side panel off the big color laser, the newer HP we'd bought when we started sending glossy bids to general contractors. The service sticker with the serial number was right where the tech had left it last month, scuffed but legible. I took a photo. Then I opened the toners and took photos of the cartridges, too. If Dr. Chen could decode the microdots to a model in a serial, we'd cross-compare. I was halfway through reseeding the magenta when the door opened and Ethan leaned his shoulder inside like a snake testing the air. "You get lost?" he asked. I kept my body between him and the serial sticker. "Just making copies of the TRO order," I said pleasantly. "Judge Hastings says we preserve everything. That includes you." He smiled in that flat way that makes you want to check your pockets. "I have nothing to hide." "Then this will be easy," I said, and the look in his eyes changed, just a blink, but I filed it away for later. Before lunch, I drove to the UPS store to meet Tara for Sharon's deposition. The conference room was a table tucked behind packing peanuts and a corkboard of shipping rates. Sharon sat straight-backed with her journal open in front of her like a hymn book, her hands folded on top of each other in the way of people who expect to be judged. Tara was clinical kindness. Ethan's lawyer sent a junior associate who looked like he'd been ordered from a catalog, perfect hair, perfect binders, eyes calculating whether the paper cuts would scar. Under oath, Sharon said she did not notarize my signature on October 17th. She identified her stamp when shown a control sample and said calmly that the embossment on my document lacked her stamp's nick. She flipped to the 17th and read the entries. "No Alvarez," she said. "No stock transfer." When the junior associate tried to rattle her, "Could you have simply forgotten?" Sharon stared at him as though he had asked whether she sometimes forgets her name. "My journal is my memory," she said. "I was not there." We walked out into bright, cold sun that made the sidewalk look bleached. Tara exhaled in a ribbon. "That plays well," she said. "I'm filing the video clips as under seal exhibits this afternoon. We'll also move for a temporary restraining order again based on spoliation risk if he blinks the wrong way." When I got back to my mother's, there was a box on the stoop addressed to me in a handwriting I didn't recognize. Mom stood in the doorway wiping her hands on a towel. "Delivery guy said it was urgent." Inside the box was a manila envelope with no return address. Inside the envelope were 8 printed photos, glossy, each with a yellowish cast like they'd been printed at a pharmacy in a hurry. The first was a shot of me in the Daily Center Plaza, head turned as I spoke to Tara. The second was me walking into Dr. Chen's building. The third was my car parked on Peoria, license plate crisp. The fourth and fifth were of Mom's house, from a car window, shot through a windshield, with the wiper arc ghosting the bottom like a crescent. The last 3 were close-ups, my face, looking down, my mother through the kitchen window, and a zoomed frame of the Nest camera mounted in the basement stairwell. There was a post-it on the last one. In Ethan's handwriting, "Smile, sis. You always liked being on camera." For one long second, my skull felt hollow, like someone had lifted off the top and the wind moved through. I set the photos down carefully, one by one, like they were old bones. I looked at Mom. She had gone very still, the towel limp in her hands. "He knows we have the video," she said softly. "He wants us to be scared," I said, and even as I heard myself, I felt the old heat in my throat that anger gives. "Let him want." I called Tara and told her about the photos. She didn't swear. She just said, "I'll move for a protective order and sanctions, and we get that camera footage in the cloud in 3 places today." I told her it already lived in 4. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay on Dad's old brown sofa downstairs because the sound of the house at night was the only thing that made my heart beat slow. The furnace whoosh, the tap of a pipe contracting, the refrigerator clearing its throat. At 2 a.m., my phone buzzed. An email from Dr. Chen. Subject line, Microdot decoding. My thumb shook a little, hitting open. Her message was spare. Elena, using EFF reference matrices, I decoded the yellow microdot pattern on the stock transfer agreement print. Result indicates device code consistent with HP Color LaserJet Pro M2081 series. Encoded timestamp 10/18/001:08 a.m. See attached image and overlay. 1 a.m. on the 18th. The paper with the notary date of the 17th had been printed after midnight. Backdated. A lie with the time still wet on it, and the printer model matched ours in the copy room. I replied immediately. Can you state your confidence level, and what would you need to tie this to our specific device? Her reply came back so fast it felt like she'd been waiting with coffee in readiness. Reasonable degree of scientific certainty for model, high confidence on timestamp. To tie to your device, we need a sample page printed from that HP that contains microdots for comparison. If the serial is encoded and matches, excellent. If not, we look for repeating dot matrix pattern unique to that unit. I stared at the attached overlay, tiny constellations of yellow like a sky only a scientist could read, and felt a rush that wasn't quite joy. It was the feeling of watching a door open that someone bricked shut because they forgot you own a sledgehammer. In the morning, scared to leave the house but more scared to sit still, I drove to the office with two goals: print a fresh test page from the HP and not get into a screaming match. On the way, I stopped at the Starbucks on 31st and Halsted, where the barista with purple hair always spelled my name with 2 L's and a Q just to make me laugh. I held the cup all the way to the parking lot like a talisman. I slipped in through the dock again and listened. The building sounded like work, a lift gate rattling, somebody cursing at a jammed pallet, the bass line of a radio bleeding through sheet metal. I walked fast to the copy room, pulled up a blank Word doc, typed Test Print 10, Elena, and hit Control-P. The HP hum rose like an animal waking. The page slid out, and I wanted to kiss it. I set it on the Light Table app on my phone, snapped high-res shots, and stuck the sheet under my coat like it needed warmth. When I turned, Ethan was in the doorway. "You know you don't work here," he said. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. His power was never in volume. It was in assumption. "I own here," I said. "Half. Try that line in court." He looked at the test page peeking from my coat and cocked his head. "What's that?" "Evidence," I said. He stepped into the room so our shoulders nearly touched in the narrow space between the printer and the shelf of toner. He lowered his voice. "You think you can win because you've got a few women on your side with notebooks and stamps and microscopes?" He smiled, and the smile made my stomach go cold. "I have something better than that." I waited. He wanted me to ask. I didn't give him the gift. "Relationships," he said finally. "People who've been in this industry for 20 years, suppliers who know me, bankers who return my calls, the guys in the trucks who've heard you cry in the bathroom when a customer yelled, 'That's power. I don't need a stamp to have it.'" I let the words sit in the air, heavy as gears. He wasn't wrong. Power is habits and retellings. It's favors banked in the marrow of a city. It's a rhythm. But sometimes rhythm can be drowned out by a siren. "I have a camera," I said. "It's louder." He laughed and brushed past me, shoulder bumping mine just hard enough to make me step back. On the way out, he tapped the printer with a fingertip. "By the way," he said over his shoulder, "nice machine. We bought it with my money." I took the test page to Dr. Chen. She compared the microdots the way a bird watcher compares feather patterns. Her office lights were dim, the blue lamp the only glow as she overlaid grids and muttered the way my father did when a motor wouldn't seat. "There," she said, tapping the monitor. "The dot matrix on your test page matches the pattern on the question document. Same spacing, same alignment. And—" she zoomed in until the dots looked like pollen. "I can see a faint serial encoding. It's partial, but the sequence lines up with HP device codes. If we can get HP to respond to a subpoena, we can tie that serial to a purchase date, possibly a buyer. We bought this unit on a credit card, I said, heart in my throat. A company card. I authorized the purchase last year. If the bank records show it and HP corroborates, we have a line from our printer to the forged document with a timestamp after 10/17. Tara nearly ran from the elevator when I texted. In Dr. Chen's office, she watched the overlays like a person watches weather radar with a storm coming toward their street. "This cracks him," she said. "If we can authenticate the Nest footage, depose Sharon, get HP to play ball, and show the timestamp discrepancy, we have forged notarization, forged stock transfer, and an attempt to backdate. Add intimidation by surveillance and possibly theft of a stamp if we can identify the woman's seal, and we're talking not just civil fraud, but potential criminal exposure." "Will the judge care?" I asked. I hated how small my voice sounded. "She'll care," Tara said. "Judges are like plumbers. They love clean intersections and hate a leak. This case is a burst pipe." We left with a list as long as a building permit, file motion for expedited discovery to HP, subpoena the temp agency for RENA, pull the alarm company logs showing after-hours access on 10/17, depose the bank officer Ethan had charmed, get the keycard system logs Alicia had saved, authenticate the Nest footage with a custodian of records affidavit, seek a temporary restraining order again on the basis of likely fraud. Back at Mom's, we ate leftovers standing at the counter because chairs felt too vulnerable. Mom tapped the Nest app and frowned. "It says the camera is offline," she said. I took the phone. The app showed a grayed-out thumbnail and a polite sentence. "Camera disconnected. Check your network." "Did you unplug anything?" I asked, knowing she hadn't. She shook her head, eyes going shiny in that way they did when a simple thing goes wrong and it's the last wrong in a tower. "No, mija. I watered the plant. I watched my show." I went downstairs. The Nest camera's cord hung loose, the plug lying on the floor like a cut vein. The outlet itself was cracked, a hairline fracture through the plastic plate. My throat went hot. I crouched and picked up the plug carefully with 2 fingers. Someone had pulled it hard enough to stress the outlet. A scuff mark streaked the wall like a rubber burn. On the stairs, there was a smear. Black, waxy. I touched it with a paper towel. Mascara. Someone had brushed a cheek with the wall. I stood in the dim basement light, hearing the house breathe, and was suddenly sure of something down to the nails. Ethan hadn't just mailed me photos. He'd come back, or he'd sent her. He wanted the camera dead. He wanted the tape gone. I ran up the stairs 2 at a time and into the kitchen, heart thudding, and that's when my phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number with a single attachment. I pressed my thumb to open it and froze as a still image filled the screen. A frame of me on the Daily Center steps, blowing hair and steel sky, and superimposed across it in neat, blocky white letters were 4 words that made the room tilt. "Check your backup, Elena." The text froze me the way winter freezes the lake. Sudden, silencing, with a deep crack under the surface you don't hear until it's too late. I checked the cloud folder Tara had set up first. The primary folder was intact. The cross-region mirror had a red banner. "Recent activity, deletions flagged." My cheeks went hot. I opened activity logs, and there it was in tidy, neutral type. 1:42 a.m., login from an IP block assigned to a downtown co-working space on Wells. 3 delete operations attempted, all denied by version lock. A 4th succeeded on a non-critical duplicate I'd forgotten to lock. I followed the IP trail through the tool's WOIS panel. The last recorded browser string read like a shrug, Chrome Windows 10. I took screenshots, exported a CSV of the activity, and emailed everything to Tara with a subject line that wasn't elegant. "He's in our house." She called before I lifted my fingers off the keyboard. "I'm moving for a protective order right now and sanctions for attempted spoliation," she said. "Forward the CSV to our forensic guy. And Elena, don't engage him directly. Every communication from now on goes through counsel or becomes an exhibit. Understood, I said, though anger scratched to be let out. One more thing. The Nest camera got unplugged. There's mascara on the stairwell wall, and I think Rena was here. Silence hummed for a beat. We'll add a police report, Tara said. Even if CPD shrugs, the paper matters. Bring Mom to my office tomorrow. We'll set her up with a sworn affidavit about seeing them in October. I barely slept. In the morning, I drove Mom to the Loop, holding her hand in the elevator the way she used to hold mine crossing State Street. Tara's paralegal made coffee that tasted like gasoline and kindness. We signed, notarized, packaged. Then my phone lit again. Dr. Chen. I overlaid the test page from your HP with the question document, she said, voice calm, precise. The dot matrices match, Elena, right down to offsets that act like a fingerprint. The encoded timestamp on your question document reads 1:08 a.m., October 18th. The notary date says October 17th. That discrepancy is a lighthouse. It's enough? I whispered. For a judge who cares about physics, she said. Ink dries after it's put on paper. Timestamps don't lie as easily. At noon, Tara's assistant slid open the glass door. HP responded, she said half breathless. They've confirmed the serial we sent belongs to an HP Color LaserJet Pro M281 we registered last April to Alvarez Heating and Supply, shipped to South Peoria Street. Purchase record shows company Visa, ending 1134. The exact card I used. Tara smiled, small and sharp. Now we braid the rope. We spent the afternoon spooling it. Sharon's journal and deposition clips cut to the clean moment where she said, I was not there. Dr. Chen's report, with images large enough for an impatient judge to see the tremor in the forged E, the HP letter, Alicia's thumb drive with the key card log showing Ethan's badge opening the dock door at 11:10 p.m. on October 17th, the Nest footage, authenticated by a custodian affidavit and preserved 6 different ways. We wrote our motion to renew the TRO like a recipe. Element, proof, authority. For authority, Tara added a paragraph that made my throat ache with the relief of being taken seriously. 720 ILCS 517.3 defines forgery. 5 ILCS 312.7.101 governs notarial acts. Backdating a notarization and forging a stock transfer are not merely oppressive to a minority shareholder, they are crimes. Before we filed, my phone buzzed again. A new number. A text short and clinical as a medical bill. What do you want? I stared. Rena? I typed. 3 dots. Then, I don't do this. He said it was just a favor. I didn't know about the camera. I swallowed hope too fast, and it burned. Meet me, I wrote, thumb shaking. Starbucks at 31st and Halstead, now. Tara read over my shoulder. We go together, she said, and we bring a recorder. Rena was taller than I remembered from the grainy stairs, long spine, thin coat, sunglasses that weren't necessary except to not be seen. She perched on the edge of a chair like she might run mid-sentence. Up close, she was younger than I'd guessed. Her nails were perfect. Her hands trembled. I need this to stop, she said before I could speak. He said if I kept my mouth shut, it would be fine, that you were emotional, that your dad wanted him to fix things. Then last night a man was outside my building, just standing there. He texted me your mother's address. I don't want any of this. Then tell the truth, Tara said, placing a small digital recorder on the table, not hiding it. We'll get you a subpoena and put you under oath, and telling the truth will be all you're doing. Rena pressed her lips together the way people do to keep from crying. He hired me through Lakefront Temps, at night. Cash in an envelope, but the first night he had me scan a packet with the company copier, and I saw your logo all over everything. He practiced your signature a dozen times on onion skin. He watched a YouTube video about matching pressure. She swallowed. He had a stamp, not like a real one, a fake one he bought on the internet, and a little round embossing tool he said his buddy could get him. He said it was just for the file, so the old man would stop asking questions. She flinched. I didn't even know your father had passed. I closed my eyes for a second because grief is not a straight line. It's a rough circle your feet find when you turn too fast. Tara kept her voice soft. Did you see him print the stock transfer? She nodded. He said, make it look expensive, and I printed it on the thick paper, and then he made me change the date. He said the notary stamp had to say the 17th because that's when your dad... She glanced at me and swallowed the rest. He thought it would look less suspicious. Do you still have the texts? Tara asked. Rena scrolled, then turned her phone so we could see. There it was in Ethan's tone, clean as winter air. Something about bring stamp, another about no cameras, a third about backdate to 10/11, and a picture of my signature taped beneath tracing paper with the caption, almost got it. Will you say this under oath? Tara asked, not blinking. Rena met my eyes. They were clear, frightened, and young enough that I felt a stab of the anger reserved for men who take advantage of youth because youth is inexpensive. He said you would destroy me, she whispered. He destroys people, I said. I fix heating. She let out a sound that might have been a laugh if it weren't so tired. You think the judge will listen to me? I think the truth is loud, Tara said. We left with Rena's affidavit drafted and signed. Tara promised to file a request to treat her as a cooperating witness if criminal charges came. It's not immunity, Tara told her, but it speaks. The night before the hearing, Ethan fired Alicia and sent a company-wide email at 9:13 p.m. with a subject line that sounded benevolent and was not necessary transitions. He wrote that I had chosen to step back to address health issues, that recent events have accelerated restructuring, and that anyone harassed by outside parties attempting to disrupt operations should report it to him. He CC'd our biggest supplier and our bank. He blind copied, according to the undisclosed recipients, someone else too. I forwarded it to Tara, and then, because dead men don't read, I read it aloud in my father's office, the way I used to read him mail when he came home at midnight and put his forehead on the cool kitchen tile to rest. I wish you were here, I told his chair, but I can handle it. We walked into Judge Hastings' courtroom with binders that made satisfying thuds when we set them down. Ethan sat on the other side, chin lifted, cuffs perfect, that look. On his face, the city teaches its sons, the one that says, prove it. His lawyer objected before the clerk even called our case. No foundation, he said. Hearsay, speculation, a familial dispute dressed as fraud. Tara stood, foot slightly forward, voice smooth as the lake on a windless morning. Elena Alvarez seeks to stop a theft that tried to wear a suit, she said. We have a forged signature, a backdated notary seal, a notary who wasn't present, a cooperating witness, and microprint timestamps that put the printing after midnight. We're not speculating, we're reading. They called Dr. Chen first. She explained pen lifts in a way even the junior associate's hair could understand. She told the judge about tremor, about blunt starts, about patching. She put the signature up on the screen and circled the hesitation at the top of the E and the retouched downstroke in the Z. Then she told the court about yellow tracking dots, about printers leaving constellations behind like stars on a map, and Judge Hastings leaned forward. You're telling me the printer stamps the page with the time it was printed, the judge said. Encoded in the dot pattern, Dr. Chen said gently, as if explaining to a neighbor why a furnace needs a filter. This document was printed at 1:08 a.m., October 18th. The notary date reads October 17th. Counsel, the judge said to Ethan's side. Their lawyer rose. Your Honor, even if true, my client might have printed a copy later. The notarization occurred earlier. Tara didn't sit. We anticipated this, she said, and played the Nest clip from 12:02 a.m., October 18th. Ethan coming down the stairs, portfolio under his arm, a woman behind him slipping a seal into her purse on the way out. The sound of the stair squeak carried across the silent courtroom. The timestamp glowed in blue numbers in the corner, like a clock face caught in ice. Sharon took the stand. "That is not my stamp," she said, then laid her journal open, as if to swear upon it. "And I did not notarize Ms. Alvarez on October 17th. Then Rena. Her voice shook. She sat straighter. She said the words backdate, practice, YouTube, cash, and "I'm sorry, Ms. Alvarez." And the courtroom changed temperature. When Ethan's lawyer asked whether she had any reason to lie, her laugh was a cough. "Yes," she said, "because I'm scared, but I'm more scared of lying forever." Alicia was last. She authenticated the copier logs and keycard records with the steadiness of someone who can read an invoice like sheet music. "Mr. Alvarez's card opened the side door at 11:10 p.m. on October 17th, she said. At 1:09 a.m., the HP M281 printed a single page. Ethan didn't testify. He stared at the windows like he could find an exit through glass. When his lawyer tried to talk about family misunderstandings, Judge Hastings lifted a hand. "Save it for trial," she said. Then she looked at me. Her eyes were the color of the river in March. "Ms. Alvarez, you have made an adequate showing that the stock transfer is likely forged and that a notarial act was falsified. I am granting a preliminary injunction. No changes to ownership, signatories, operations authority, or corporate governance absent court order. I am appointing a special master to oversee document preservation and the company's finances pending resolution. I am referring copies of the record to the Cook County State's Attorney's Office for review under 720 ILCS 517.3 and 5 ILCS 312. The gavel is just wood, but the sound it made felt like a door bolt sliding home. Around me, people exhaled in different languages. On the way out, a woman from the state's attorney's office handed Tara a card. "We'll be in touch," she said, eyes on Ethan, expression like a weather report that predicted hail. He followed us into the hallway a minute later. His smile was a cut. "You think you've won?" he said. "I think you've been seen," I said. "You always wanted Dad to look at you that way," he hissed. "He chose me." Grief flared. Not new grief. Old grief that smells like high school wrestling medals and my father's hand clapping Ethan's back when he closed a big sale. I let it pass through. "He chose the trucks," I said. "He chose customers who didn't freeze. He never chose fraud." Ethan's jaw flexed. He turned as if to go, then pivoted back and, in a voice like a blade wrapped in velvet, said, "Blood is thicker." "Then what?" I asked. "Ink?" We kept moving. The special master, a gray-haired man named Whitaker who smelled like wool, met us at the shop that afternoon. He took control like a surgeon takes a scalpel, without apology. He replaced the locks with a company, not a cousin. He imaged computers. He sat Ethan down in Dad's office, under the photo of our first delivery van, and reminded him that destruction of evidence would turn a bad day into a shorter career. That night, 2 detectives knocked on Mom's door. They were cautious, respectful, unexpectedly gentle with their shoes. They watched the nest clips, took copies, took notes. One of them, a woman with a gold cross flashing at her throat when she leaned forward, said, "People forget cameras don't blink." The next morning, our bank called. The manager I'd met 10 times and who, to his credit, remembered my name, said they had received our order and froze changes Ethan tried to push through the previous week. "I'm sorry," he said, and he sounded like he meant it. "I should have slowed this down. I saw the notary and the stock transfer and—" He cleared his throat. "If there's anything we can do to assist the court, we will." "Friday payroll," I said. "We do not miss it." We didn't. The special master approved the run. I stood on the dock while Luis handed envelopes to men who had nearly stopped meeting my eyes and watched them meet my eyes again. "La jefa," one of them said with a little grin, and I let myself breathe. In the weeks that followed, Discovery turned inside out like a pocket. Rena's texts were printed, paginated, hole-punched. HP's custodian affidavit slid onto the docket. The temp agency produced a file that showed Ethan had paid cash under a false project name. Our alarm company logs arrived, neat as a ledger, 11:12 p.m., 11:59 p.m., 12:03 a.m. The state's attorney filed an information under 720 ILCS 517-3 forgery and 5 ILCS 312, violation of the Notary Public Act. When Tara called to tell me, I sat on the stoop with the spring sun on my knees and cried the kind of cry that doesn't look like crying if you don't know the person. He took a plea, not because he was suddenly humble, but because facts shrink men who rely on fog. His lawyer negotiated without looking at us. Probation and a felony record. Restitution to the company for legal costs. A civil settlement in our case that read like a map back to sanity. Ethan resigned as officer and director. I retained my shares. He surrendered his. A neutral valuation placed a number on his entitlement to buyout that the court held in escrow, contingent on proving he hadn't bled the business. If this were a different story, I'd tell you I forgave him at our mother's table, and he cried into his coffee, and the ghost of our father smiled. That isn't this story. This story ends in a small, echoing courtroom where he stood to allocute and said the words, "I signed her name," and the judge asked him if anyone forced him to plead, and he said no, and the court accepted it, and something heavy I had been carrying since the day he slid that frame across my father's desk stepped off my back and onto his. After, on the plaza, the wind did its Chicago thing, lifted my hair, tried to scrape me clean. Tara hugged me once, quick, because we don't do ceremony. Dr. Chen shook my hand and said, "If you ever want a printer that doesn't leave dots, use inkjet." Sharon pressed a Tupperware of lemon bars into my hands and said, "We did right by the stamp today." And for the first time in months, I let myself laugh in a way that didn't sound like breaking. We rebuilt. Rebuilding is slow, unglamorous work. It is cleaning the coffee ring on Dad's desk and ordering a backup furnace for a church with a boiler older than the priest and learning which of the men who believed him because believing men like him is easier than believing women like me. I hired Alicia back with a raise that made her protest and then grin. I sent Raina a letter that said, "If someone asks you to backdate anything again, call me. I will talk you out of it." She sent a reply with a coffee gift card and a line I saved. "I want to be the kind of person you think I can be." The oak desk is still in our conference room. The water ring from Dad's thermos is still laid into the grain like a coin caught in varnish. The framed stock transfer agreement isn't on it anymore. I didn't burn it. I didn't shred it. I slid it into a drawer with Dr. Chen's report and Sharon's journal photocopy, and our orders with Judge Hastings' signature, and the microdot overlay that looks, if you squint, like a night sky. I keep it all because paper fights paper, and because a lie that elegant should be kept as a study specimen for the truth. Sometimes, late, when the trucks are back and the radios finally stop, I touch the brass keyhole on Dad's desk and look out at Peoria Street, and I think about the first time I saw that forged E swell like a sail, and the last time I heard a gavel, and how those two sounds are part of the same sentence if you speak it long enough. People ask what revenge felt like. I tell them it felt like the heat kicking on after a long cold. No fireworks, just the quiet tick of metal expanding and the air softening until your hands remember what it means to let go. I didn't forgive him. I forgave myself for not seeing it sooner. And when I lock the office, when the fluorescents flicker out and the shop smells like dust and copper and exhaustion and summers spent in garages, I whisper my father's line into the dark because I have finally earned it. Paper fights, paper. The rest is noise. And if you stand close to the frame in that drawer and turn the page just right, under the right light, you can see the way the dots glow and spell time in a language the liar forgot, and you can almost hear the whisper the page makes when I slide it into place, like a promise kept. The end,